They built a towering fence around my ranch thinking they'd trapped me, laughing as they did it. Little did they know I'm the county land commissioner, and their smug HOA was about to face a reckoning they'd never forget. If you love jaw-dropping HOA drama and epic takedowns, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss a single chapter of this wild story. Let's dive in. The sun hung low over the rolling hills of Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the sprawling ranch that had been in my family for 3 generations. The air was thick with the scent of wild grass and pine, a reminder of the untamed beauty I'd fought to preserve. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and as the county land commissioner, I'd spent years ensuring the land in this county stayed true to its roots, open, free, and unspoiled. But on that fateful morning, as I stepped onto my porch with a steaming mug of coffee, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A gleaming 8-foot-tall metal fence now encircled my entire property, cutting off my access to the county road. Its cold, reflective surface glinted mockingly in the dawn light, a deliberate barrier erected overnight by the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. The HOA had been a thorn in my side since they'd formed 2 years ago, when a wave of affluent newcomers flooded the area, snapping up land to build their cookie-cutter mansions. They called it progress, but to me it was an invasion. They'd brought their rules, their regulations, and their insufferable sense of entitlement, determined to reshape Willow Creek into their sanitized vision of suburbia. My ranch, with its rustic barns, free-roaming cattle, and weathered fences, was an eyesore to them, a stubborn relic of a bygone era. They'd sent letters demanding I repaint my barn, trim my hedges, even remove my grandfather's old windmill because it clashed with the aesthetic. I'd ignored every one, tossing their notices into the fire pit with a chuckle. But this fence? This was war. I set my coffee down and walked the perimeter, my boots crunching against the gravel. The fence was sturdy, professionally installed, and stretched as far as I could see, blocking my driveway and the dirt path I used for my livestock. A small sign hung on the gate, emblazoned with the HOA's logo and a smug note: property enclosed for non-compliance with Willow Creek HOA standards. Non-compliance. The audacity of it burned in my chest. They hadn't just blocked my access. They'd caged me in like an animal on my own land. I could imagine them at their last meeting, sipping overpriced wine and laughing at the thought of teaching the country bumpkin a lesson. They didn't know who they were dealing with. As land commissioner, I had authority over zoning, land use, and county ordinances, powers that could make or break developments like theirs. But I'd always played fair, approving their permits despite my personal disdain because the law was the law. Now, though, they'd crossed a line. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos of the fence, noting its exact placement. It ran along the edge of my property but also encroached onto a narrow strip of public land, a county easement they had no right to touch. That was their first mistake. I drove my truck to the county office, weaving through back roads to avoid their blockade, my mind already racing with plans. At the office, I pored over property records and surveys, confirming what I'd suspected. The HOA's fence wasn't just on my land. It violated multiple county regulations. Easements were sacred, meant for public access and utilities, and no one, not even a self-important HOA, could obstruct them without approval. I cross-referenced their permits and found nothing authorizing the fence. They'd acted unilaterally, assuming I'd roll over like the other locals they'd bullied. I leaned back in my chair, a slow grin spreading across my face. They'd handed me a loaded gun, and I was about to fire the first shot. I drafted a formal notice, citing the specific ordinances they'd violated and demanding the fence's removal within 48 hours. I sent it certified mail to the HOA president, a woman named Patricia Wentworth, whose condescending smirk I'd seen at public meetings. She was the ringleader, always preaching about community standards while ignoring the heritage of the land she stood on. I pictured her opening the letter, her perfectly manicured nails trembling as she realized her mistake. But I wasn't done. I contacted the county surveyor to schedule an inspection and reached out to a friend at the sheriff's department to ensure enforcement if needed. The wheels were in motion, but I knew Patricia and her cronies wouldn't go down without a fight. Over the next 2 days, I watched the fence from my porch, waiting for a response. None came. Instead, I saw HOA board members driving by, peering at my property like vultures circling a carcass. They didn't know I was watching, documenting every move. On the third day, a work crew arrived, not to remove the fence but to reinforce it with additional panels. My jaw tightened as I realized their game. They were doubling down, betting I'd back off. They were wrong. I filed an emergency motion with the county board, requesting an immediate injunction to halt their work. As land commissioner, I had the authority to call an emergency session, and I did, scheduling it for the following morning. That night, I walked my land under the stars, the fence looming like a scar across the landscape. My great-grandfather had carved this ranch from nothing, taming the wilds with his bare hands. I wasn't about to let a pack of suburbanites erase that legacy. The HOA thought they'd trapped me, but they were about to learn what happens when you corner someone with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. As I turned back toward the house, a plan solidified in my mind. Tomorrow's meeting would be the beginning of their downfall, but it was only the first chapter of this battle. The morning of the county board meeting dawned crisp and clear, the kind of day that made Willow Creek feel like paradise. But inside the county office, the air was thick with tension. The boardroom was packed, not just with board members but with curious locals who'd caught wind of the showdown. Patricia Wentworth strode in, flanked by her HOA allies, all dressed in crisp blazers and exuding confidence. She carried a thick binder, no doubt filled with their justifications and legal jargon. I sat at the head of the table, my official title giving me the chair, and watched her eyes narrow as she realized I wasn't just some rancher. They were facing the county land commissioner. I presented my case methodically, laying out the evidence, the photos, the survey maps, the ordinances they'd violated. The fence, I explained, wasn't just an inconvenience. It was an illegal obstruction of a county easement, a direct challenge to public access and safety. I cited precedent, referencing cases where similar violations had led to hefty fines and mandatory removals. The room was silent, the weight of my authority sinking in. Patricia's face tightened, but she didn't flinch. When it was her turn, she launched into a rehearsed speech about protecting property values and maintaining community standards. She claimed the fence was necessary to address my non-compliant property, which she called an eyesore that lowered the neighborhood's appeal. Her words stung, but I kept my composure. The board wasn't swayed by her rhetoric. They knew the law and they knew me. After deliberation, they voted unanimously to issue the injunction. The fence had to come down and the HOA would foot the bill. Patricia's mask of confidence cracked, her lips pursing as she whispered furiously to her lawyer. But I wasn't done. I requested an audit of all HOA permits and activities in Willow Creek, suspecting this wasn't their first overreach. The board approved, and I saw panic flicker in Patricia's eyes. She hadn't expected this level of pushback, let alone from someone with the power to unravel their entire operation. As the meeting adjourned, the locals buzzed with excitement, whispering about the HOA's comeuppance. I left the room feeling a quiet satisfaction, but I knew this was far from over. Patricia and her board wouldn't accept defeat gracefully. They'd retaliate, and I needed to be ready. Over the next week, I dug deeper, pulling records of every HOA project in the county. What I found was a pattern of violations, unpermitted renovations, coerced easements, even fines levied against residents without proper documentation. The HOA was operating like a miniature fiefdom, and I was determined to bring it down. But then, as I prepared for the next phase, something unexpected happened. Late one evening, I found a new notice taped to my gate. It wasn't from the HOA. It was from the county clerk's office informing me of a petition to challenge my position as land commissioner. The petitioner, Patricia Wentworth. She wasn't just fighting for her fence. She was coming for my job, my reputation, and my family's legacy. The stakes had never been higher, and as I stared at the notice under the dim glow of my porch light, I knew the next chapter of this war was about to begin. If you're hooked on this epic HOA showdown, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and share this story with your friends. Stay tuned for the next chapter because things are about to get even wilder.